What's up, everybody? So I wanted to give you guys a video showcasing some of the tools that I used in the porting of that intake manifold. Basically, what you're going to need is a 8mm 1/4 inch drive, deep socket. You're going to need, I believe it was a 14mm deep socket. That's going to be to remove the fuel rails. That 8mm you're going to use for everything else, removing the intake manifold, getting the boot off the intake. And that's really about all you need it for. I mean, that's the only bolts that are holding that thing on there. So now getting to the actual tools that I use to do the porting itself. First thing, yeah, got to go with the old rotary cutter, right? This is just a rat tail strapped onto a Dremel. Pretty common thing. The tip that I used was this. I don't know if you can see it real well. It's this kind of a pinkish orange color. Real mild stone. I'm not really sure what the number is. I just know it comes in a kit when you get the shit for your Dremel. But again, not using a cartridge roll on this. Keep in mind you're using this bit on basically it's a plastic intake. I mean, it's a polymer, but it's not going to be anything like aluminum or anything like that. It is going to be very soft, and so you want to use something that's going to be very forgiving. This tip here, again, you're not going to get into too much trouble with this, provided that you use a little bit of technique. So what's the technique, right? Basically what it is you're just going to barely hold on to this thing. You're holding on to it more or less like it's like a pin, and just, you know, so that you can stabilize it. I'm using this clear Coke bottle so you can kind of get an idea for what I'm talking about in terms of how much pressure that I was using. So as you run the tip into that port and you start to cut, basically you're just going to put just a slight amount of pressure on that tip, just enough to where you're controlling the tip itself, letting the tip do the actual work, let the tip do the actual cutting. You'll notice on this tip too, just so I can show you, you'll have some of the shit from that intake still on there. It doesn't really hurt the performance too much of that tip, but the thing that I liked about it was it just numbed the tip just that much more. Was not removing too much material. Again, the idea with this, not really a mod, I wouldn't say, it's more of corrective surgery, but the idea is just to remove any of that intrusion into that intake runner. So that's basically the technique that I used. Again, another tool you're going to need to have with you will be these tub of towels. That's right. If you've got a garage and you're working on stuff, chances are you found these things. If you haven't found them yet, they're not paying me for the spot, but these things are the shit. These things get basically grease, grime, all kinds of crap off your hands. If you're working on something that's grubby, those things work pretty well. The cool thing about them though is that they work really well in this application. They do have that kind of a sort of moistness to them, kind of like a wet nap. And what I was using them for was pushing those down into the runner to catch any debris as I was doing the cuts. I could push them pretty far down into the runner. They would catch anything as I was doing the cutting, but they didn't catch everything. And for that, you're going to need some type of a small vacuum. I have one of these mini shop vacs, and again, if you don't have one of these, they're not paying me for the spot either. I wish they did. But if you don't have one of those, definitely go pick one of them up. Made a big difference in this. I've got these extra attachments. You can pick them up if you don't have the attachments. You got a regular shop vac, do just as good. Anyway, these attachments were great for getting down into the runner. Use painter's tape to tape around the seams here so that I didn't have this little bastard flopping around in my intake manifold wreaking hell, trying to get that thing out. That had pretty much ruined this whole project. But anyway, this stuff does come apart pretty easy, so I would suggest taping these things together. But using that brush to get down in there, scoop out any more debris, and then I would pop the brush off, reach down in there and grab that wet nap and suck it right out of that intake manifold. So again, those are some of the things that I used in the process of putting this thing together, or putting this project together. Now, as far as, you know, how much material I was really removing, in some runners I removed more, in some runners I removed less. Again, just letting the tip on that Dremel do the work, letting it dictate more or less. Letting the softness, using a real soft touch and just barely kind of cutting that stuff out. You can see in the before and after pics, I was actually able to remove quite a bit of material just that was intruding into that intake manifold. If you guys have never done any type of work like this, this is a great time to learn. I mean, if you've got one of these cars, they're super easy to work on. And here in just a second, I'm going to show you basically just how easy it is to work on. But if you use a very soft touch, don't get in there and get all, you know, stabby with that thing. Just be real careful with it. Go ahead and just remove the intrusions into that intake manifold. Believe me, I think if you just put your mind to it that you can do it, I promise you can do it. It's not that difficult, and it's actually kind of fun, kind of a fun project. One other tool I didn't mention yet you're going to need is a 1/4 inch torque wrench. The torque specs for the intake manifold are only like around 9 or 10 foot-pounds of torque, and if you have a large torque wrench, you won't be able to fit it down into the back of the intake manifold to tighten some of the manifold bolts up. So do yourself a favor before you start the project, get yourself one of those itty-bitty 1/4 inch torque wrenches. If you don't have one of those, I'm pretty sure you could use a stubby, just a little short 1/4 inch drive. The idea is not to put a whole lot of torque on it. You just want to seat the intake manifold down on those cylinder heads. So again, you're not trying to grip it, but you're not trying to put a lot of wrist into it, so to speak. You're just basically, if you're going to torque it down without using a torque wrench, just use the finger method. And once you start feeling, pretty good give, you should be good. You'll feel the intake manifold sit down on top of that cylinder head, and you're just going to kind of keep running that thing down. If you've got a torque wrench that beeps or clicks, it'll do that. If not, then I suggest you get one. Plastic's kind of a pain in the ass to work with, and you don't want to torque it down too much. It gets hot, it'll crack. So just keep that in mind before you get too heavy-handed with that, with tightening everything back down. So let me show you the engine itself, give you an idea of some of the pitfalls you might run into when you're removing your intake manifold, and that will be about it for this. So let's get started on that. Take you guys over there. Sorry about the shitty camera work, but that's what I got to work with. So I'm going to start on the passenger side over here. You've got the bolts right here for the intake manifold. There's 10 in total. Of course, you're going to have 8 injectors. Now, the injectors themselves, these things are pretty easy. These clips just basically pop up. Connector will pop off. So those are fairly easy. Now, the bitch I was talking about resides right in back of this intake manifold. You can't really see it, and I can't show it to you because I don't have the intake manifold off. But take my word for it, it's a pain in the ass, and it's mainly only a pain in the ass because you can't really get to it very easily. Coming back on this side of the engine, basically it's more of the same, except on this side of the engine, you will see your fuel line right here. You'll see these red clips on the back. These clips are holding that retainer in place. Basically, these will pop off. Just be careful that this thing doesn't haul ass in that direction, wind up somewhere on the back of your engine. This clip, if you can see it, you're going to, basically, you can walk that out with your fingernails. You may need a small flat head in some cases, but that will slide out, and then this will come right off. You don't need any special tools for that either. And it's pretty much no mess. You're not going to see a whole bunch of gas come flying out of there. The hose to the brake booster back here runs along the top. You'll have these little clips that hold it in place on top of this hose. They're open, so they actually just pop right off. Nothing to them. Kind of give you an idea for what they look like there. But those will just pop right back on into place. Do not try to remove this from the back of the intake manifold because it ain't going to want to come off, folks. I promise you that. So that's basically how involved it is to remove that intake manifold. Just remove the torque sequence is outside in, going in a kind of an X pattern. Torque it back down, inside out. Again, you're going to be about 109, 110 foot-pounds, 109, 110 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds of torque to put that thing back on. And that's pretty much about it. Don't forget to be real clean, try to treat it like you're doing surgery on it. You want to keep it as clean as possible. And that's pretty much about it for the project. As far as how it performs, I can tell you this, it's a little bit better in the mid-range. It might be a little bit better on the top end. I haven't really beat on the car too much, but I did get a chance to take it out, get a couple of 0 to 60 passes with it. First hit was a 4.4. almost as good as my best ever pass in slightly cooler weather. I took it back out. I got a little excited about that and got a little heavy-footed with it and lit the tires up on the first couple of tries, and then basically turned into a little bitch about getting into the throttle after that. So wasn't able to get better than a 4.4, but the first hit right off the bat was a 4.4 in pretty awful conditions. So at any rate, that's it for this project. Hope this was helpful, and hope this gives you some confidence to get out there and tackle it yourself. If you've got the tools to do it, then chances are you've got the skills to do it, because it's not that difficult. Just be real careful. Don't get too heavy-handed with it, and I think you'll turn out just fine. If you've done this modification already to your car, post up the results. Let me know what you found out. If you have any other mods that you've done to your car, post that stuff up too. Let us all know how you're doing with yours. That's about it. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. If you don't like it, tell me that I suck. I love it too, man. Anything helps. Adios.